Ya no quiero seguir esperando. Veamos qué pasa.
Look at him there, pushing buttons, doing exactly what he's told to do. Now he's pushing a button. Now he's eating lunch. Now he's going home. Now he's coming back to work. One might even feel sorry for him, except that he's chosen this life.
Bueno, vamos a dejar... Es que, ¿qué puedo hacer mientras? Voy a poner pausa y voy a planchar mi uniforme. Si me dice algo cuando es que sin grabar ni modo, pero ya no voy a seguir las órdenes de este cabrón. Bueno, señores, después de tiempo me puse a planchar y bla bla bla, y es obligatorio oprimir el botón.
But in his mind he can go on fantastic adventures. From behind his desk, Stanley dreamed of wild expeditions into the unknown, fantastic discoveries of new lands. It was wonderful, and each day that he returned to work was a reminder that none of it would ever happen to him.
Amen.
And so he began to fantasize about his own job. First, he imagined that one day while at work, he stepped up from his desk to realize that all of his co-workers, his boss, everyone in the building had suddenly vanished off the face of the earth. The thought
Entonces estoy soñando o qué?
So he went further. He imagined that he came to two open doors and that he could go through either. At last, choice. It barely even mattered what lay behind each door. The mere thought that his decisions would mean something was almost too wonderful to behold.
Ya, que pase de
As he
repente.
wandered through this fantasy world, he began to fill it with many possible paths and destinations. Down one path lay an enormous round room with monitors and mind controls. And down another was a yellow line that weaved in many directions. And down another was a game with a baby. And he called it the Stanley Parable.
Oh, entonces se va a convertir en mi oficina.
It was such a wonderful fantasy, and so in his head he relived it again, and then again, and again, over and over, wishing beyond hope that it would never end, that he might always feel this free. Surely there's an answer down some new path, mustn't there be? Perhaps if he played just one more time. But there is no answer. How could there possibly be? In reality, all he's doing is pushing the same buttons he always has. Nothing has changed. The longer he spends here, the more invested he gets, the more he forgets which life is the real one. And I'm trying to tell him this, that in this world he can never be anything but an observer, that as long as he remains here, he's slowly killing himself. But he won't listen to me. He won't stop. Here, watch this. Stanley, the next time the screen asks you to push a button, do not do it.
Dije que no le iba a obedecer.
You see? Can he just not hear me? How can I tell him in a way that he'll understand that every second he remains here, he's electing to kill himself? How can I get him to see what I see? How can I make him look at himself? I suppose I can't, not in the way I want him to. But I don't make the rules. I simply play to my intended purpose, the same as Stanley. We're not so different, I suppose. I'll try once more to convey all this to him. I'm compelled to. I must. Perhaps, well, maybe this time you'll see. Maybe this time.
Ya ábreme la puerta, pues tengo que
And I
volver a
tried
empezar.
again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I tried again, and Stanley pushed a button. And I...
Mamadas. Así que otra vez. A ver, el caso es que no hay que darle por esa plataforma. Hay que darle a la izquierda.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean?
Si no lo paso en esta ya,
Stanley
ya,
decided to go
ya
to
la
the meeting.
terminé.
Perhaps he had simply missed a memo. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not
Vamos a
the
seguir lo
correct way
mismo,
to the
solamente ya
meeting
le voy a
room,
dar por
and
la
Stanley
izquierda.
knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was sublime, a work of art. But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
Y después lo voy a volver a ignorar.
And so he detoured through the maintenance section, walked straight ahead to the opposite door, and got back on track.
Sí voy a ir allá. Para subir a la sala de negocios, no, quiero darle por acá. En la sala de negocios hay otro. Ah, las escaleras.
Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief, Stanley decided to go up to his boss's office,
Ya me la
hoping he
cerraron.
might find an answer there. Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office. But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy.
Ya me
And
quiero
then
ir.
something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. All of my co-workers blinking mysteriously out of
¿Este auto cómo
existence
ya
in
entró?
a single moment for no reason at all. None of it made any logical sense. And as Stanley pondered this, he began to make other strange observations. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he moved down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever?
Ah, me persigue un
And
fantasma.
for that matter,
O estoy
these
muerto.
rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Were they simply repeating? No, Stanley said to himself, this is all too strange. This can't be
Hijo de
right.
tu madre.
And at last, he came to the conclusion that had been on the tip of his tongue. He just hadn't found the words for it. I'm dreaming! He yelled. This is all a dream. Oh, what a relief Stanley felt to have finally found an answer, an explanation. His co-workers weren't actually gone. He wasn't going to lose his job. He wasn't crazy after all. He thought to himself, I suppose I'll wake up soon. I'll have to go back to my boring real-life job pushing buttons. I may as well enjoy this while I'm still lucid. So, he imagined himself flying and began to gently float above the ground. Then he imagined himself soaring through space on a magical starfield, and it too him. It was so much fun, and Stanley marveled that he had still not woken up.
Es un
How
sueño
was he
lúcido.
remaining so lucid?
Señor
Then
lúcido.
perhaps the strangest question of them all entered Stanley's head. One he was amazed he hadn't asked himself sooner. Why is there a voice in my head dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking?
Porque no se calla.
Now the voice was describing itself being considered by Stanley, who found it particularly strange. I'm dreaming about a voice describing me, thinking about how it's describing my thoughts.
No me vas a confundir, no me vas a
And when I
confundir.
thought it all very odd and wondered if this voice spoke to all people in their dreams, the truth was that, of course, this was not a dream. How could it be?
Lo voy a
Was
cortar.
Stanley simply deceiving himself, believing that if he's asleep, he doesn't have to take responsibility for himself? Stanley is as awake right now as he's ever been in his life.
Ok, lo voy a... Mientras se quita el ruido, vamos con la serie.
I speak these words as quite a shock to Stanley. After all, he knew for certain, beyond a doubt, that this was in fact a dream. Did the voice not see him float and make the magical stars just a moment ago? How else would the voice explain all that? This voice was a part of himself too. Surely, if he could just... He would prove it. He would prove that he was in control, that this was a dream. So he closed his eyes gently, and he invited himself to wake up. He felt the cool weight of the blanket on his skin, the press of
Ok, vamos a despertar.
the fresh air of the world outside this one. Let me wake up.
Y al final ese no va a ser el camino.
I'm through with this dream. I wish it to be over. Let me go back to my job. Let me continue pushing the buttons.
Si le hubiera acabado la primera, ahorita
It's
que lo
all I
pienso.
want.
Si no hubiera
I
oprimido el
want
botón
my
de on.
apartment and my wife and my job. All I want is my life exactly the way it's always been. My life is normal.
Yo soy normal. Todo estará bien.
Everything will be fine. I am okay.
No, no.
Stanley began screaming. Please, someone, wake me up. My name is Stanley. I have a boss. I have an office. I am real. Please, just someone tell me I am real. I must be real. I must be. Can anyone hear my voice? Who am I? Who am I?
El juego de
And
terror.
everything went black.
Oh, pues.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Mariela.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, gathered her belongings, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming
Muerto.
to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. And although she would soon turn to go call for an ambulance, for just a few brief moments, she considered the strange man. He was obviously crazy. This much she knew. Everyone knows what crazy people look like. And in that moment, she thought to herself how lucky she was to be normal. I am sane. I am in control of my mind. I know what is real and what isn't. It was comforting to think this, and in a certain way, seeing this man made her feel better. But then she remembered the meeting she had scheduled for that day. The very important people whose impressions of her would affect her career, and by extension, the rest of her life. She had no time for this, so it was only a moment that she stood there, staring down at the body. And then she turned and ran.
A ver. Entonces, otra vez tenemos que hacer eso. No me digas que voy a volver a empezar. Bueno amigos, aquí se termina la serie. No voy a volver a pasar por lo mismo. Ya terminé el juego.
What could it mean?
Que tenga muchos
Stanley decided to
finales
go to the
alternativos, no me
meeting.
importa.
Perhaps he had
Aquí
simply
le
lost a
dejamos.
memo.
A ver que si vuelven a sacar otro juego que le soporte las computadoras que tengo. Sale. Y disculpen el final. Adiós.